Right now, 48. Skies are clear. Your next news update, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So it's 6 months since the October 7th attack, terrorist attack by Hamas in Gaza.
It feels like 5 to 10 years, doesn't it? I mean, 6 months, I was surprised that it's, I don't know, lasted this long.
There's been a lot of activity, war, packed into those 6 months, no question. And the 6 month mark was the occasion for the Biden administration, through its spokeshumans like NSC spokesman John Kirby, to take a harder line against Bibi and the State of Israel in terms of its response to that terrorist attack, its efforts to eradicate Hamas. We note over the weekend that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, withdrew nearly all their troops from southern Gaza. I guess this is in anticipation of peace and ceasefire talks that are to take place again in Egypt. We'll get more color on that from our next guest, Stephen Bucci, in a moment. But here's what Kirby had to say on Face the Nation as to the question of conditioning continued support in the terms of military aid to Israel on Bibi paying more attention to what Biden is saying.
Is the Biden administration position still that there should be zero conditions on aid, military aid to Israel?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president or decisions he might or might not make going forward. He was very clear in his call with the prime minister that if we don't see some changes in their policies in Gaza and the way they're prosecuting operations, we're going to have to make some changes of our own.
You do think these are Israeli policies, then, to block aid?
They get to decide how they prosecute this war. It's their operation. We just talked about them pulling troops out and what that means. They get to decide how they prosecute operations. We get to decide how we're going to react to that and how we're going to administer our own policy with respect to Gaza. We make those decisions, and the president was clear with the prime minister. If there's not changes, if things don't get better, then we're going to have to make changes of our own.
Things don't get better.
What does better look like?
Interesting phrase. Now, concurrent to that sort of rhetoric was this sort of rhetoric, because it was International Al-Quds Day, and there were rallies among the Arab American population around the country, and, of course, in Dearborn, Michigan, which has a sizable Arab American population.
Yeah, they're chanting death to America, death to Israel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on Quds Day, which is to commemorate opposition to Israelis' quote-unquote occupation of Palestine. That's the purpose of the day and the rallies, the quote-unquote occupation. I say that with quotation marks because it's a false allegation. Give an example of what you're dealing with and who the Biden administration is pandering to. Hamas enthusiasts like this activist named Tariq Bazi, who had this to say on Quds Day, the Quds Day rally in Dearborn, Michigan.
We've been asked in the past, why are our protests on the International Day of Quds, why are they so anti-America? Why don't we just focus more on Israel and not talk so much about America? Gaza has shown the entire world why these protests are so anti-America. Because it's the United States government that provides the funds for all of the atrocities that we just heard about. And this is why Imam Khomeini, who declared the International Day of Quds, this is why he would say to pour all of your chants and all of your shouts upon the head of America. Malcolm X said, and I quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth." It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth. And so when these fools ask us if Israel has the right to exist, the chant "Death to Israel" has become the most logical chant shouted across the world today.
Seems like a reasonable chap.
Oh, yeah.
And his comrades there, "Death to America, death to Israel," is what they were chanting at his beckoning.
If they hate America so much, why don't they leave?
Probably because he's a tenured professor at Michigan University or something. University of Michigan, maybe Michigan State.
Who knows? Yeah.
Following Tariq Bazi, next up on the hit list was Michigan Imam Usama Abdelghani. He feels about the same way.
Imam Khomeini recognized that Israel is an evil settler colonialist project. He realized it is a cancer, and he established this day. Israel, before this, brothers and sisters, was a sacred cow. Nobody could criticize Israel. Everybody was terrified of being anti-Semitic. Everybody was afraid of them. But now, the people of conscience very openly will criticize Israel. They recognize Israel for what it is. Israel is ISIS. They are Nazis. They are fascists. They are racist. The people of the world now know this.
Yeah,
And
right.
little kids up there
Yeah.
saying free Palestine. Because
Little-
it's so cute when the kiddies do it.
Little kids, members of Congress like Rashida Tlaib, who can tell the difference. So that's who the Biden administration wants to appease by taking at least rhetorically, a hard line against our most important ally in the Middle East. Interesting. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci, who is, he served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. He's a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Steve Bucci, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. I'm always happy to be on the show.
So, this ratcheting up of the rhetoric from John Kirby and others in the direction of Israel after those aid workers were inadvertently killed. What do you anticipate Bibi's reaction will be as he's facing some protests at home as well? And how should we understand this, at least temporary withdrawal of Israeli Defense Forces from southern Gaza?
Well, I'll start with that last part first. The movement of the troops in Israel by the Israelis makes perfect sense. I don't know, when did that unit go in? Was that the first unit that went into Gaza? So now they're pulling them out to give them a little rest because after 6 months of intense urban terrain fighting, they probably need a break. I wouldn't read too much into the movement of those particular troops. That's a tactical level decision probably made by the Israeli military and not necessarily by Netanyahu himself. With regard to what Netanyahu is going to do based on this phone call, look, the Biden administration is pandering to the demographic that you identified there, these folks who had this rally and others in the country. Most of them are wildly inaccurate with their history and even their political analysis as far as how deep that kind of feeling goes in this country, how deep it goes in other countries. I think it's ludicrous for supporters of Hamas to claim genocide against anybody else in the world, including Israel. I love when people do this, like Hamas. They go and kick over the hornet's nest, and when they get stung, it's the hornet's fault.
Right.
It's nutty. And now you have I believe, Sunni Arab American people in Michigan, quoting the Shia imam from Tehran, who, by the way, thinks they are not even Muslims, would be happy to persecute them if they were in his country, and then to sit there and say this is the worst country in the world. Everybody knows that now. First of all, we're not the only country that supports Israel. We are probably their biggest supporter, no doubt, but that's because Israel has been our biggest supporter in the Middle East. So it's kind of, it's a dangerous one because there are people who are radicalized in that community, not all of them. Unfortunately, of the 100,000 people who live there, there's at least 4 to 5% adequately radicalized that they might take action here in the United States.
Well, what do you think, John? Yeah, what do you think John Kirby means when he says if there's not changes, then we're going to have to make changes of our own? What does that look like?
It's a veiled threat that the Netanyahu administration doesn't do exactly what Biden may have demanded of them in their recent phone call, that they're going to cut off aid. I mean, that's the veiled threat. And that sovereign actions of another sovereign nation and says, okay, you can do whatever you want. That's your country. But if you do certain things, we change the way we interact with you.
Hey, John, you're cutting out a little bit too. Do you have are you in a bad spot, cell spot?
No, I'm sitting in place. How's this? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try that.
Okay. By academia, that means what he said is untrue. Politically, I don't think Biden's he's losing a lot of support anyway among Democrats because a lot of Democrats do support Israel, and to pander to that one relatively small demographic there in Dearborn and a couple other pockets around the country, and maybe some kids on a college campus or so, to suddenly cut aid to Israel, I think would be a death knell to Biden. I think if he significantly changes our degree of aid to Israel, it will have enormous ramifications negatively for Biden. So I don't think he'll do it. He doesn't have the courage to do it.
Well, all of this, these guys. I mean, it's always do just enough to keep up appearances, but not enough, or don't allow somebody, don't go along with somebody who is willing to do enough to actually win a particular fight. And so we see the same thing happening in Ukraine. And it's so funny, too, because all this high-minded rhetoric of righteous causes, and we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, and we're preserving democracy, and we're repelling a dictator, a revanchist dictator, and Putin, and so on and so forth. And then you hear, according to the Financial Times, Biden administration urging Ukraine to halt its campaign targeting Russian refineries, warning that the drone strikes risk driving up global oil prices and provoking retaliation. Oh, now all of a sudden there's political political considerations like the price at the pump here in America that Biden is worried about because he's hamstrung our domestic oil production, and he doesn't want the cost of global oil to increase because since we're an importer again, that would be bad for his reelection chances come November. So there's the pandering on the one side to a sensitive constituency that is infiltrated by all sorts of illiberal Islamo-fascist nutcases, including members of Congress. And then there's this other side where Ukraine, we have to do whatever, anything it takes, whatever, we got to stop. And it's, but hey, don't get too aggressive with this worst dictator in the world kind of thing is the rhetoric. because, I still got to make sure that people don't take it in the shorts at the pump.
Yeah, it is kind of, you sit there and shake your head that, Biden loves to take so-called moral stands, but he doesn't have the stomach to back it up with the action necessary or to pay the price that's required. And I'm not talking about sending American troops or anything else. Heck, just keep giving them rhetorical support to the good guys would be helpful. But he literally is a political weather vane, whichever way the wind blows. And frankly, it's not even the majority wind. They're little puffs of wind from spots around the country or around the world or particular political positions. And this is one of the worst politicized in the sense of swinging back and forth, depending on the headlines of the day, administrations I've ever seen. I mean, it happens all the time. This kind of stuff always has political tinges to it. But boy, with the Biden administration, it's kind of over the top and embarrassing. Our adversaries overseas have got to be sitting there going, yeah, this is really entertaining watching this guy twist himself in the United States into pretzels. It's just embarrassing, frankly.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen Bucci, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Have you been struggling to find an easy, safe, and secure document scanning solution for Salesforce.com, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, or OnBase by Highland? Your struggle is now over, and it's time to get your documents and operations into the 21st century. With IoT Smart Connected Scanning, it's easy to turn physical paper into digital documents and have them directly uploaded to the cloud with IoT Smart Connected Scanning from IDT. And you don't need a degree in computing or IT to make it happen. Using QR code technology uniquely configured for your specific business, any